So Steve Kerr made headlines this week. And I'm not going to talk about what he said about gun control because I haven't read that. And I may talk about it on tomorrow's pod because I'm going to talk about some woke shit and all that other stuff. So I may hit that. I don't know. But so he was on the Real Ones podcast and he was talking about just the different iterations of the Warriors team. And he said on there that last year was tough. There was a lot going on and some that you didn't know about and some that you don't was very difficult in reference to his last season with Kevin Durant. Drew Shiller, a writer for, I want to say, NBC Sports Bay Area, he took the piece out and he tweeted it out. He tweeted out the quote. And I went back and listened to it, and Steve Kerr talked about enjoying last season when they were terrible more than he enjoyed his last season with Kevin Durant. And Steve Kerr calls him out in the press conference the day after the tweet comes out, or the day the tweet comes out. People are blowing up the Drew Shiller's comments, saying like, hey, man, you should be fired for this because you didn't properly frame it. And I guess what's being said is he didn't frame the quote properly by saying, by throwing the Kevin Durant piece in there. Okay, he used Kevin Durant to get more attention to the tweet, obviously. But for me, if you say the year, or if you say the year that, or Kevin Durant's last year, was it 2019? Mm-hmm. If you go 2019, fine, I go Raptors year, right? Or if you say Kevin Durant's last year, I go, oh yeah, that's the year the Raptors won when KD and Clay got hurt. But anyways, Steve just like goes off and says that there were other things that were leading to why the season was so bad, like the pressure and the injuries and stuff. But he did not say that in the podcast. He didn't say that until he goes off in the press conference. And I'm just like, bro, Steve Kerr, you said what you said. Just stand on it. And the fact that the reporter is apologizing for tweeting what you said because he didn't frame it properly because you got to be sensitive and getting your feelings about it, I think it's crazy. And it scares me to see where media could be going to where you have to walk on eggshells because, God forbid, you quote somebody and they don't like their own quote and they get to call you out. So I thought that was just awful showing by Steve Kerr, who is typically a classy individual. But it takes me into asking, man, Steve Kerr, how good of a coach is he?
I think he is a very good coach. I think because team was pretty much the same that he got from Mark Jackson. And he took them to a championship when with Mark Jackson, they couldn't get, I think they got to the second round.
Yeah.
So he took them over the top. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's one of the greatest coaches ever. Like he just got blessed with a great team. He was part of their success though. And I think a big part. So I think he's also a big part of the criticism they should get, like for the loss in 2016. Yes, they were doing some things on the court where like Steph did that behind the back pass and stuff like that. I don't understand why he didn't play Leandro Barbosa more because they were doing great when he was on the court and then he stopped playing him as much. So I think the success and the accolades he gets is fine. I think the criticism he gets is also warranted, but I'm not going to sit up here and say like, bro, you had Steph and Clay and Draymond, they did everything for you. And then of course KD came and we just know probably the best team to ever assemble. But we're not going to sit up here and be like, Steve Kerr didn't do work, though.
No, I don't like the narrative that he's not a good coach because he made noticeable changes that made them a champion versus a playoff team. You know, he put Draymond in the starting lineup. He put Steph on the ball more, and it's not just having him in the corner. Instead of running so much pick and roll, they started more of a motion offense. Like he made obvious changes to what was happening in Golden State that made them champions. Mm-hmm. And guess what? the job is balancing egos, managing egos, and it's hard. And if you look at any great dynasty, they don't last long because people have egos. People want to get credit for what it is that they do. Players want to play a certain style. Like, hey, KD went there because he wanted to play the motion style that they played. But then it's like, hold on, this is too much motion. Like, I'm KD. Like, I want to ISO a little bit more often and get to play that way. And so, again, Steve was able to make that work. And as much as we credit Kawhi for his great finals, which, I mean, if you look at his numbers, yeah, a little overblown. He had a great playoff run. But does anybody think they actually win that championship if KD is healthy the entire finals? Or fuck
I
that.
think if Clay doesn't even go out, they win.
If Clay doesn't get hurt, I still think the Warriors win.
Yeah.
So what's
KD's like foregone conclusion. I think even if Clay stays healthy, they win that series.
Absolutely. So I don't like that I don't like that piece about Steve Kerr, him not being a good coach, but him not taking accountability for his words is just bullshit.
That one, like I read it, and didn't he say 2019 KD's last year?
I don't remember.
So if he framed it as KD's last year, people are automatically going to assume.
Oh, you're talking about the journalist? Yes.
Yeah. So if you say KD's last year, people are automatically. But didn't the journalist take the quote from Steve? Or did he just say?
So I'm gonna read the tweet. Steve Kerr told at Logan Murdoch he enjoyed last season when the Warriors were 15-50 more than Kevin Durant's final season with the Warriors. Quote, that last year was tough. There was a lot going on. Some that you know about and some that you don't. That was very difficult. End quote.
So if that is the quote that last year, if he just was referencing 2019 and saying it was hard for stuff you know and stuff you don't know, once that guy throws KD's name on it, people are going to assume you're talking about KD. So I get him being upset there because he's like, whoa, bro, like you linked KD to the year, and yes, it was KD's last year. But all I was saying was there were some things we were dealing with internally. There's a lot people knew about. There's a lot people didn't know about, and it made it tough for us as a whole. And it was referencing the injuries, the egos, all the pressure. He was referencing everything. So yes, KD was part of it, but he was referencing everything. Once you say KD as a journalist, you are saying people are going to look at it and see it as KD was the problem this last year, and it was more fun this losing year than like when this guy made a toxic environment for us. So I get him saying it was taken out of context there because that's not what he said, and that's not how it was meant.
But if you remember after the 2018 season, David West came out and talked about how hard that season was.
Mm-hmm.
Steve and Kevin have kind of, they've hinted at some things, and Kevin Durant didn't come back. Your core stayed the same. Kevin left. So even if Drew Shiller is wrong for using Kevin Durant's name, which I disagree with, I think it's fine because it gives you a point of reference for the year, and it didn't say anything damning about Kevin Durant, but actions have shown that there was a locker room issue. Kevin Durant went on record and said, hey, he had an issue with the way that the Draymond situation was handled because they gave Draymond the suspension, but they didn't actually address the problem, and they didn't see what Draymond did. They didn't see that as being problematic, and Kevin Durant left. So there's obviously tension there. It's out there, so you can't get mad at somebody for speaking about something that's true.
No, and I got what you're saying there, but it was 2 years ago. If he would have just said losing in 2020 was more fun than the season they had in 2019, we all know that's the KD year. We all know there was a bunch of things going on that year. So it leaves it open to interpretation that it could fall under any of these things. Once he says KD's name, when Steve did not say KD's name specifically, you're king on that one issue when there were a lot of other issues. And of course, that was the biggest one. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and be like, oh, well, like they also had injuries that were just as important. And like, no, the injuries were as important in the playoffs. But up until then, it probably was not fun all year because you had this looming thing between KD. You don't know where he's going. He's fighting with Draymond, and that was a big public fight. And everybody expects y'all to win a championship for the third time in a row. And the inside of the locker room was crumbling. So I get that was the biggest issue. But once the journalist says KD, it immediately becomes KD. And even if that was the biggest issue, we all kind of know it was, Steve ain't say that. And that's the part, if I'm Steve, that I would take issue with as well.
Fair. I just think Steve took a cheap out right there because he got caught up saying some shit on the podcast and he didn't provide the full context in the podcast that he gave in the press conference. But there's probably also some other stuff going on there. I don't follow enough Warriors media to know what their relationship could be like because they could have a terrible relationship. And it's like, come on, bro, you really doing this shit again? Like,
yeah, my thing is, we know it was an issue, and Steve was likely trying to be diplomatic, not bring up that one particular thing. Was saying like, hey, we had a bevy of issues. If I'm trying to be diplomatic and you're the one that hints at that issue, even though I wasn't hitting at that specifically because I was being diplomatic, I'm gonna also be like, bro, you said that, not me. And I too would be like, it was taken out of context. I did not say that. And he was trying to be diplomatic. We know KD there was an issue there, but he was trying to not single anyone out, which I get. And the reporter singled that one issue out. So I have no problem with Steve being like, hey, bro, he said that, not me. That was out of context. All I said in context was we had some issues. And I got no problems with it.